Hi, and welcome to Extraordinary Pursuits, a podcast from BIP Ventures. I'm your host, Rochelle Kuramoto. Join me each week for masterclasses and conversations about the skills and experiences that matter most to startups in the innovation economy. You will hear from subject matter experts and founders. We're here to inspire, inform, and occasionally even entertain you. Let's get started. Today, we are joined by Grayson Leverenz, a go-to-market leader who has built and scaled growth strategies across marketing, sales, and partner success. Grayson started in market research at Universal. She earned an MBA from the University of North Carolina's Kenan-Flagler School of Business and managed the Aveeno brand at Johnson & Johnson with a $14 million budget for marketing, bigger than many startups' total revenue. In 2008, Grayson launched her first venture as digital marketing was taking off, which led her into SaaS sales and eventually to joining a company called Spiffy as the vice president of marketing. There, she helped to grow the company from $1 million and 2 cities to $70 million and nationwide presence. Today, Grayson is the founder of Groove GTM, where she acts as an operating partner that helps companies make the right first marketing hires and build the strategies that fuel sustainable growth. Let's get started. All right. Welcome to another episode of Extraordinary Pursuits, a podcast from BIP Ventures. Today, we are so excited to have a longtime friend of mine and someone who has a skill set that is incredibly valuable to our listeners, Grayson Leverenz. She has done what most go-to-market leaders only see in pieces. She has led marketing, sales, partner success. She has actually scaled a startup from $1 million to $70 million in ARR, and we will talk about that story today. And we are also going to talk about how to build growth from every angle. Grayson, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Rochelle. I am thrilled to be here today.
Awesome. So, Grayson, you and I go way back, and since that time, you have walked an incredible journey that has spanned corporate, it has spanned startup. You are an experienced entrepreneur in your own right as the founder of Groove GTM, which we will talk about in a little bit here. And you've also contributed to the explosive growth of a brand called Spiffy. Can you just take a few minutes and tell us about yourself, about your journey, and how you ended up doing what you're doing now?
Absolutely. I have spent the majority of my life here in North Carolina. I have lived as far north as Boston, as far south as Orlando, spent a little bit of time in Germany and a little bit of time in Brazil. One thing that has remained consistent throughout my life is that I have spent, like you said, all of my career in the world of go-to-market, marketing, sales, and partner success. I actually started out in the world of marketing research, so helping clients turn numbers into words to tell their consumer stories. And then from there, after I did my MBA at UNC Kenan-Flagler, I did my big brand experience at Johnson & Johnson, where I worked on the Aveeno body lotion brand and got to manage a $14 million marketing budget. So I got to see all of the things that come with that and learn about the world of integrated marketing. I learned so much at J&J, and one of the biggest things that I learned was that those large companies are not for me. And so I actually gave notice at 9 a.m. the day that my contract was up and went to start my own first venture. So I worked on a venture called MBA in the USA, which was an ed tech business for international students coming to the US to study. Along the way, I met the founders at RW3 Culture Wizard, who work in the SaaS world, selling intercultural training to global business people to help them communicate more effectively across cultures, lead with a global mindset, things like that. They did not need a marketer, but they needed a salesperson. And I said, well, I've never done sales before, but I feel like I can figure it out. And so I went and learned all about SaaS based sales, worked with them for 7 years, closed some amazing deals like the Walt Disney Company, Hilton Hotels, International Paper, just had a fantastic experience. Along the way, my husband and I had moved back to North Carolina from New Jersey. And I met Scott Lingo, who is a serial entrepreneur here in the area. Scott was building Spiffy at the time. And we talked for about a year about what he was working on, what he was doing with Spiffy, his goals and dreams, and about me and how I like to build brands. And after a year, the time was right. He offered me a job and I joined Spiffy. Like you said, we were at 1 million ARR at the time and in 2 cities. And I helped grow the brand to 50 cities nationwide and a 70 million ARR. So it was a fantastic run of explosive growth, just like you said, multiple back-to-back years of triple-digit growth. Along the way, in addition to running the marketing team, I also started running the franchising teams as well as the partner success teams. And then in August of 2024, after 8 years and all of that wonderful growth, I decided that I was ready to go out on my own again. And so I left Spiffy. And in January of 2025, I launched Groove GTM. The goal of Groove is to help entrepreneurs develop first marketing hires that drive growth. And I'm excited to tell you more about it today.
That's great. Wow. So Scott is a friend of BIP Ventures, and it's really cool to hear that story, and to know that, experienced entrepreneurs with a vision and incredibly relevant experience with, sort of the whole vertical stack can
Yeah.
make something big happen. So that's very cool. So before we jump into all of the incredible knowledge that you're going to drop on us, tell us a little bit more about Groove. We understand sort of why you founded it, but what are sort of the core pillars that you are providing to your clients, through Groove?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, we've got to start with the customer. And so, when we think about the customer and the ICP for Groove, I think about Spiffy
Mm-hmm.
8, 9 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, a company that has very clear product market fit, that knows their customer, that has typically 1 million plus in ARR, like between 1 to 10, and is really ready to scale. So, when you have founders that are in that position, they have the product market fit, they know their customers, they know they're ready to scale. Basically, they can do one of two things. They can either start to build an internal marketing team, or they can work with people in an operating partner or a fractional capacity. So, one of the things that's been super interesting about this journey is I'm really treating Groove GTM exactly the way that I teach entrepreneurs to build their own marketing teams.
I
So, I'm
wondered.
doing a lot of
Mm-hmm.
testing, learning, iterating, and optimizing. So, I started off offering traditional fractional CMO services, which is basically where you just jump in, you roll up your sleeves, and you are a marketing team of one. And in some cases, you have some agency support. And so I did that in Q1, had a lot of fun, learned a lot. One of the biggest things that I learned there was that I really love working with early to mid career marketers that have a ton of potential and really just need to develop some rigor around process and go to market motion. And so in Q2, that's what I started experimenting with, was really focusing on that operating partner role. So working with people, first marketing hires, whether it's a director level, like a 75, 80K a year person, or a VP level person that might be 1 to 150, but still kind of like half the price of if you're bringing in a
Yeah.
CMO like you
Yeah.
would when you're, at a 50 million ARR. So I've been having a ton of fun with that, with teaching these early to mid-career people the frameworks that I use, the go-to-market motion that I've developed and optimized over the years, and I'm seeing some really good results. So everything from 25% month over month MQL growth to my biggest success story so far is I have one client who has seen 3x month over month growth in her MQLs since she's been running the Groove GTM system.
Wow, that is so impressive. So
Thanks.
one question that comes to mind that we have gotten in the past, and this is a little bit
Yeah.
of a sidebar question, is you've talked about the team member, and
Yeah.
in your opinion and in your experience, that first hire, do you tend to look for someone who is more of a strategist or more of an
Yeah. That's,
executionist?
yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. And in an ideal world, and actually even really in a real world,
Hmm.
they need to have at least a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So when I talk to entrepreneurs about how to build a high performing marketing team, the skills that you need really fall into three different quadrants. So you need someone who is an expert in organic and earned. You need someone who is an expert in paid acquisition, and then you need someone who is an expert in design. The strategy, of course, pulls all of those together. So when I came into Spiffy, and actually, let me take a step back. So, and you can do that with a combination of internal hiring, or again, that idea of having one head of marketing and using different agency partners, contractors, fractional people to help make up the difference. So,
Okay.
like when I came into Spiffy, I have expertise in organic and earned. And then, of
Hmm.
course, because where I was in my career at the time, I also had the strategic perspective.
Yeah.
And then the first hire that I made was a paid acquisition expert. And then
Okay.
after that, quickly a designer. So we had been
Okay.
using an agency for the design piece, but then we ended up bringing that all in house.
Yeah.
So I think that the answer is you need a strategic thinker that can really roll up their sleeves and get stuff done when you're at the 1 to 10 million looking to scale.
Yeah.
And so if you can't get someone, like if you can't afford someone who has strategic thinking skills yet, the that's that's the gap that Groove helps to fill. So we help people, if they come in, they have a ton of potential, they maybe have 3, 5, 10 years worth of experience in that organic world or that paid world. Then from there, you can start to teach them how to think strategically about go to market, how to build the motion, and how to really start getting people in your funnel and moving them through.
Brilliant. That's a great answer. And I think particularly for growth stage founders who are trying to figure out how to make the most of the limited resources they have and the very
Yeah.
large KPIs that they have,
Yes.
that sort of balance and knowing where to bring an outsourced person and where to bring an in-house person is a really, really smart approach. So thank you for answering that so
You're
clearly.
welcome.
So, I think that let's talk about KPIs for a minute, right? So,
Okay.
as anyone who has ever marketed or sold anything will tell you that, customers buy potential. They don't know what it
Yes.
is. They buy the story, right? So,
Hmm.
how, when you are developing a go-to-market strategy, do you hone in on a story that will support KPIs and bring in all of these different pillars of a cohesive go-to-market strategy and team.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Storytelling is one of my favorite things. And so it is something, it actually is a huge compliment that Scott Wingo, the Spiffy CEO, former Spiffy CEO, Scott's onto a new company now as well. And so one of the biggest compliments he ever gave me is actually on my website where he talks about my skills in storytelling. And it's something that I really deeply appreciate. And so I think this goes back to my roots in marketing research and a really deep desire to understand what motivates people to do certain things. And so, whether that is interacting at a high level with a piece of content, or actually, especially if you're in a B2C environment, what's going to motivate someone to purchase your product. And so, when I think about getting to the root of the story, there are old school ways to do it. And then there are also really new and exciting ways to do it through AI. So, classic ways are the marketing research approach of doing consumer research. And you can do that even at an early stage, very low cost using tools like SurveyMonkey if you want to get a broad representation, broad samples, you can use a tool like that. And then you can also, like, one of the things about the idea of go to market is it is bringing the different components out of their silos. And so making sure that your marketing people are really closely integrated with your salespeople. So they're listening in on sales calls and contributing in that way. And then likewise, that your marketing people are really in touch with your customer success people. And again, that they're listening in on customer success calls and getting to engage in that way. And then this is where in this new world of work with AI, some of the coolest things are coming out where, like, you can take transcripts from customer calls and from sales calls, run them through AI, start to pull out keywords and things that are super important to your buyers. And then the marketing team can take that back and develop content, omni-channel content from high level focused on SEO, AEO, GEO, all the way down to specific pieces of content for sales and then support for customer success. Like, it's a really exciting world right now to be able to uncover stories and then create content out of them.
Yeah, it really is. And you've mentioned, a few acronyms that some of our listeners may not yet be familiar with, but things like GEO are changing how content functions. And it is
Yeah.
so much more about the question and answer and the dialogue and really understanding, what is the value of a story? What is the value of a piece of content? And
Yeah.
and therein, what is the value of that thing, that product, that service, that company? And so listening is critical. And I think that what I
Absolutely.
hear you talking about is really, making sure that there's a lot of listening, there's a lot of access given for the storytellers to hear what the market is saying. So
Yeah.
great, kind of tactical approach. And you're right. I mean, that just really takes everyone being close together. And that's, I think one of the ways that we see this sort of sales, marketing, customer service sort of acting as a unit. That's where some of that
Yeah.
value is, just removing the barriers. So let's actually get tactical for a second. There's something
Okay.
on your site, and it references the role of yes and.
Yes.
And so as you are honing your storytelling, as you're honing your messaging, and you're making sure that it is resonating with your ICPs, your ideal, customer personas and audiences
Yeah.
across multiple points in your omni-channel, universe,
Mhm.
how does yes and function? How does that work? And what is the value of the exercise?
Yeah, definitely. So, yes, and comes from the world of improv. So,
Yep.
if you've ever watched improv or taken an improv class, maybe then there's an idea where basically you never say no when someone brings something to you. You take what's being given and you say yes and so it can come up with some absolutely hilarious things in the actual world of improv, but I love to use it in the world of marketing in a couple of different ways. So the first way is helping entrepreneurs to understand that what I'm building with Groove is different from traditional fractional CMO work or traditional marketing consulting work. Because a
Okay.
lot of times, like I would hear when I was talking to entrepreneurs as I was trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do next, that the thing that they struggled with traditional marketing consulting is how slow it is. Because when you're building up foundations, when you're doing all of that research to uncover the ICP and develop your persona messaging and your brand story and all of those things, it can take months. And entrepreneurs are, just ready to go often,
Right.
especially when they've gotten to the point where they've got the product market fit and they're ready to scale. So the idea of yes and in that context is that while we're building out foundations, we can also start to launch impactful campaigns using the Groove 3-1 framework. So it's yes and there. So we're going to build the foundations and we're going to launch campaigns. And then, when you're looking at campaigns, when you're getting things out in the world in the yes and style, you're doing things strictly based on the previous experience where the entrepreneur took it from 0 to 1. So they might be things that we end up fine tuning after we've got the foundations done. But, a lot of times like that really resonates with them. It's basically like the machine that you've built from 0 to 1 is not going to stop while we do this foundational work. And so it's yes and in that way. And then the other thing that I really like about it is it speaks to the world of integrated marketing. Some people call it omni-channel marketing. So the idea of one message, many channels. And so you can think about this where if you have a good consumer insight that leads to a good piece of pillar content, then it's like, yes, I've got this pillar content. A lot of times around the 1 million and looking to scale stage, that would be a case study, like a
Hmm.
success story.
Hmm.
And so it's like, yes, we've got this content and we're going to take it and we're going to break it out. We're going to use it for emails. We're going to make a video out of it. We're going to put it on social media. We're going to take a flyer to this conference that we're going to. So it's yes. And once you identify a pillar, then you really make sure that you're using it in as many channels as possible.
That's so, so smart. And, I think one of the ways that, we have done that and, in sort of the content marketing mindset is to almost think about mind mapping, right? So you've got that core pillar
Yes.
and then all of these little offshoots and really thinking about, okay, well, in this offshoot, in this version, we are at this point in the funnel and we're really targeting this particular member of our audience because they are more
Yes.
likely to consume this format. They're looking for this message. You're really understanding those things. With that in mind, and knowing that you are running sort of longer term and shorter term, efforts concurrently,
Hmm.
what is the best way to, set the KPIs for each of those different pieces of the consolidated effort?
Yeah.
And what role does, I would imagine, like sort of the ongoing market research and listening play in making sure that you are iterating as needed and making sure you do understand, oh man, okay, our target audience really responds well here and we don't need to spend our time and resources over here. How are you
Yeah.
setting those KPIs and measuring them along the way to make sure that your resources are being optimized?
Yeah, definitely. So, in the spirit of integrated marketing, one message, many channels, You're focused on both organic and paid. And then the way that I teach people to set KPIs is actually by marketing channel.
Okay.
So the Groove 3-1 framework that I've referenced a couple of times, I'm going to break it down for you because I think it'll be a good way to answer this question.
Okay.
So this is all about running campaigns. So this is the third step. So step one is the foundations that we've mentioned. So making sure that you have your marketing, your strategic marketing foundation set. So that's the ideal customer profile, the brand story, the persona messaging, and your marketing calendar. Then the second bucket is around building your architecture. So making sure that you have your CRM set up properly, that you have your Google Tag Manager set up, that basically all of your analytics, like all of your data is going to be clean. And then the third step is actually launching and running campaigns. And so the campaign framework that I teach people is a 3-1 framework. So in the first week, you are creating and launching a new campaign. And so we'll continue with that example of a case study. So, it's starting with writing the case study, getting the case study designed. You're doing that at the beginning of the week and you shoot to launch a campaign by Thursday. Never really want to launch anything on Fridays, especially in the summer. And
Yeah.
so you shoot to launch on a Thursday. And again, you're hitting multi-channels. So you're making sure it's on your website as a pop-up. You're sending out an email to your prospect list. You've got your sales team equipped to talk about this, many different ways. So week one, you create and launch. Then in week two, you are amplifying that message. So that could be taking the case study and making a short summary video that talks about it to capture attention both in email and social media, for example. And then in the third week, you are focused on either expanding, if this is a campaign that's going to run a little longer, or if it's something that has an end date, like if you are trying to convince people to sign up for a webinar, for example, that's when
Mm-hmm.
you're doing a last chance push in week three. And again, you're taking the same content, pulling out pieces of it, repurposing it so that it will hit people at different stages of their customer journey. Integrating, you're integrating your paid ads as well, you're retargeting. And then in week four is where the magic happens. Now, this is what you were talking about, Rochelle, with KPIs.
Yeah.
So you have KPIs set at the beginning of a campaign. So overarching marketing KPIs that you align with the leadership team, and you look at those by channel. So whether they are website visits, social media impressions, email clicks, form fills that equate to MQLs, you map those out by channel. And then in week four, this is again where the magic happens. So you have all of the content that you're going to publish in week four scheduled. So that the machine keeps running. And then you, and eventually when you have a team, you and your team can take a step back and really think deeply and strategically about the KPIs, about the story that the data is telling you. And then, just like you said, you can optimize and iterate for the next campaign.
Okay.
And so, some of the things like that I worked with my team at Spiffy on and teach entrepreneurs now is when you're thinking about time management. So if you think about like 70% of your time, you're doing things that work. So things that have shown results. Then you're taking 10% of your time and testing something new. And based on the results of that 10%, the 20% is spent on nurturing tests from the previous cycle that worked well. So this is again, it comes back to yes and. So we did a test, it worked, yes and we're integrating that into the 70%. So does that get us
That's
there?
really, yeah, absolutely. It's
Okay, good.
incredibly smart and an incredibly efficient way of running. And I think particularly with the role that AI is playing and how it is changing not only how we produce content, but also how people are ingesting content, I would imagine
Yeah,
that's a whole new factor in this iterative process and this testing process, and probably giving people the opportunity to go back to things that maybe worked a while ago, but they can pull off the shelf and dust off, and all of a sudden there are all kinds of new ways to put that to use.
absolutely. Yeah, that I love that reference of going back to things that worked well and you think could work well again in this new world. And so I was actually working on that before our call today for one of my clients. They have just a wealth of content. And I'm like, yeah, there's got to be a way to, like you said, dust some of this off and optimize it for LLM discovery.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're right on track with what I've been working on just today.
Yeah, same. Well, that's very cool. So as we sort of, round the corner and we close up this conversation, I'm curious,
Yeah.
is there anything I haven't asked you that as you're talking with entrepreneurs, you find is really important for them to know?
That's a great question. And I think continuing along the lines of where we've been going,
Yeah.
the thing on everyone's mind right now is SEO and organic content feeling like it's falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
And so Scott Wingo, who we referenced a few times in the conversation, does he puts out a newsletter. It's a Substack called The Tweener Times, and he has, I think it's like a 6-part overview on SEO falling off a cliff. And so Scott and I have had a lot of fun talking about this, and he actually brought me in to speak on a panel at Raleigh Durham Startup Week
Hmm.
about how to combat this world that's changing so quickly because of AI. And so I had those things running through my head. That's always a question when I'm talking to entrepreneurs. And my thesis for 2025 has been twofold. First, just continue creating great content and getting it out in the world. One thing that might be a little different in that spirit is remembering the fact that all of these LLMs are based in designs that were written by PhDs. So if you think about creating content like you're going back to college and making sure that you're citing your sources, that you're quoting experts, that you're including stats and data as much as you can, those are things that are really going to stand out to the LLMs and help you start ranking there. And then the second part of the thesis is around just human connection, making sure that you are connecting as an entrepreneur, as a marketing leader, anyone on the founding team, making sure that you're connecting in as human a way as possible. So whether that is in person at conferences or in the digital world, like we're doing today, connecting with each other and talking about things that are inspiring and helping us learn. So those are the two things that I've been really helping people to think of. And then another exciting thing, I was listening to a woman that I graduated from Keenan Flagler with. Her name is Amber Armstrong, and she's a CMO at Salesforce.
Mm.
And she was talking about the fact that she has now actually seen data that is showing that if you're doing these things that I've been talking about, that she's got data to prove that it's working. That,
Ah,
the ideas behind just continuing to build good, solid, long form content that, you can see the results, not only in SEO, but also in the answer engine optimization, so AEO, and the GEO, generative engine optimization. So it's really
mm.
exciting.
It's very exciting. And I'm so glad that that's where we landed because I think that that is a topic that is intimidating a lot of people and making them think that it's a whole new kind of hire, it's a whole new kind of mindset, it's a whole new kind of an investment, when in fact, it's actually a whole lot of endurance and thinking smartly. And your alignment to, collegiate writing, university writing is so brilliant. And, AI is even making that so easy. If you use Grammarly, you can literally go in there and set it so that any kind of citations are, MLA or, you can decide. And,
Yeah.
it's very, very simple. So thank you for, indulging me with that final kind of out of the blue question. Where can people learn more about you and about Groove GTM?
Thanks, Rochelle. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Grayson Leverenz, and the Groove GTM website is just that, groovegtm.com.
Makes good sense. Well, it has been my honor and pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your experience, and your story.
You're welcome, Rochelle. It's been great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Extraordinary Pursuits. If you enjoyed what you heard, please like and share the show. It helps others to find us. Now, let's go build the future of the innovation economy.